was going to be. And then he showed up, and look, in week 1, he looked pretty good.
He was the highest graded. He was the highest graded offensive lineman by Pro Football Focus through the first 2 games.
He looked pretty good early on, and then whatever happened, we don't know for sure what happened.
Right.
All we know is that he didn't play, and now, the future's uncertain. So I don't think in my mind it doesn't change much. Like, I think with him playing at the level he was playing through the first 2 weeks, they might have been able to be a little bit better than what I expected. But honestly, my formulations for the season from the outset didn't really involve much of Micah Mazzccua. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much it can change based on that.
Yeah, and listen, we saw the difference in the run game when he came out. And with that being said, like, this coaching staff hasn't seemed like they wanted to hang their hat on running the football anyway. And I think a lot of that is because Dylan Raiola is better than I think anybody expected him to be 4 games into his college career. Now, can he continue to play at the level he's at without regressing? We'll see. I mean, we felt really good about Heinrich Haarberg for a few games last year, and obviously 2 completely different quarterbacks. But
did we feel really good?
I mean, when you win 5 games as a starter, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, okay."
Did we feel really good?
Yeah, I think people felt good about his running ability. Is that fair? Is that fair?
Totally fair. I think people felt really good about his running game.
And the one thing that I think this is going to do to Marcus Satterfield and Matt Rule and Glenn Thomas and that group of coaches is make them become creative in a sense that you're going to have to find some other way to move the football. Now, this team has been really reliant on throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage up until this point in the season. That's something that has been a key factor in what this offense has wanted to do. And for a couple of reasons. A, they got the speed to do it. But B, they've had some question marks on the offensive line. And C, probably setting some stuff up down the road to probably, I think that Jacory Barney jet sweep has been something that's been a setup play where they're going to kind of fake it to him and maybe throw one to Isaiah Naylor over the middle or try to get to Jamal Banks down the field or something like that. But you're going to have to become more creative on the fly now, in my opinion, because I don't think this running game is going to be as dynamic, even though I feel like Dante Dowdell is one of those backs that'll get better as the year goes along. But I think they're going to have to find some way to maybe throw a couple more intermittent routes. We haven't seen a whole lot of slants or anything like that. I'd like to see – I think I would rather see that than those behind the line of scrimmage screen plays or quick outs or whatever it may be, just to keep the defense accountable of plays downfield. Now, this could all be by design, by things they want to set up in Big Ten play in those bigger games, and that's part of what the offensive coaching staff's job is to some degree as well. But to me, when you have Dylan Raiola's arm talent, but the lack of maybe progress you're hoping to see from your offensive line due to injuries and other reasons, I think you got to just try to keep the defenses honest and take as many shots downfield, or even 5 to 7 yards downfield as opposed to behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I think I said this early on. Like, I was skeptical about Nebraska's ability to make a huge jump to that 9-win, 10-win plateau this season, just because, like, looking at the offensive line, and a year older isn't always a year better, right? Like, these are a lot of the same guys that were so maligned under Frost, that everybody hated, that everybody threw under the bus, that didn't like them. And yes, they looked a lot better last year than they had before, but that still isn't saying a lot, because they looked very bad in the years before that. So this week, I don't think you're going to notice. You're not going to find out a lot about the run game, because Purdue's got one of the worst run defenses in America,
and that's putting it nicely.
So this week, I don't think the loss of a Micah Mazzccua is going to show up as much as it would, say, next week against Rutgers, right? Like,
and for those of you getting ready to say Nebraska's run game is back, when you call Gary Sharp and John Schreiner tomorrow on Big Red Overreaction, just take it with a grain of salt who the competition was.
The breaks.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reason, to your point, a lot of the reason people were so adamant that this offensive line was going to be better was because I think a lot of people looked at the progression they made last year and naturally thought there would be a progression this year. But on top of that, they've added a lot of depth. But the problem is that depth is very young. Like guys like Sam Sledge, we saw Gunnar Gattua at the end of the Illinois game. I think he played pretty well, but guys like Grant Bricks, Tyler Knack, like those guys, yeah, they were highly recruited, but they are still very, very young. And being a young quarterback, it is easier to play than being a young offensive lineman in the Big Ten.
The problem with projection is like we don't account for a ceiling, right? Like sometimes a player has hit his ceiling. Like this is as good as he's going to be. And we just expect them to continue to get better throughout time. And we don't take into account sometimes that like, no, this guy's maxed out now. This is as good as he gets.
I feel like that was a Bryce Benhart reference. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a lot of the offensive line for Nebraska. That's a Turner Corcoran reference too. Like, and I know he's injured and is going to be out for a while, but like Benhart and Corcoran last year probably played about as well as they're going to play. Like they're not going to get that much better than what they showed last year.
I'm going to go on a limb here. I'll be surprised if we see Turner Corcoran again. I just, for that big of a human being to have that serious of a hamstring injury to play that position, like I just like very rarely do you get a guy back after something like that
6 weeks.
At that size. Yeah,
probably 6 weeks
at the minimum. And obviously that gets you towards the tail end. And if this offensive line starts to find a way to gel, maybe a detriment to bring him back too. Like I don't know if I necessarily think that's going to be the case, but if it is, I mean, and he's got a future to think about too. And if you could re-aggravate that, what does that look like? You don't want to tear it. You definitely don't want to tear the hamstring. So yeah, I think this offensive line is probably the biggest question mark going forward. Let me ask you, because we didn't talk about this a whole lot. The defensive line looked as suspect as it had under Tony White last week.
He got bullied.
Do you think that was a one? Like we never talk about it in the sense of this could be a one-off situation. Like, do you think last Friday was the outlier, or do you have concerns going forward?
No, I certainly hope it is, because that's looked at as the biggest strength of Nebraska's defense, and
it's Nebraska's team.
And look, man, like I don't think Nebraska came out of that second half ready for the war. Like they were not in the fight. Yeah. They got pushed around. Illinois ran it for over 6 yards a carry in the second half or something like that.
After averaging under basically 3.5 the first. Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever happened at halftime was not good. And they did not come out in the second half playing with the same level of intensity. So like, I'm not sounding alarm bells yet. I think it's right now it's a one-off. But it depends on how they look against Purdue also, because they should dominate Purdue. That defensive line should eat, and Devin Mockabee should not be running for 5.5 yards a carry.
Hey, maybe he transfers to Nebraska after this season. Hey, that was the opening segment tonight. Our thoughts on the offensive line, the issues facing Nebraska heading forward into the rest of Big Ten play. If you missed it, check it out at soundcloud.com/afterhours1620 or wherever you may find your podcast at. It was brought to you by Amber Best with Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate. If you're looking for your forever home, or maybe you want to move your house off the market, you listen to this show, you hear us talk about Amber Best. You never hear us repeat the same house over and over again. You know why? Because Amber sells houses at a faster rate than almost anybody in the metro area. Head over to Amber Best, that's BESS.com tonight, and work with the best. We'll be right back talking about beer sales at Memorial Stadium. It's coming. Get ready, folks. We'll be right back here on After Hours.
Hey, everybody. John Schreiner here for Jerry Ryan Clothing and Sportswear. We got a special event coming up at 78th and Dodge at Jerry Ryan. You need to get there next Thursday for the annual Mizzen and Main Trunk Show. Mizzen and Main's polos, fantastic. Great sports shirt, easily washable, stretchy for trim or regular fit, and Jerry Ryan has both. The Trunk Show is next Thursday, and it's going to kick off the 51st anniversary sale for Jerry Ryan. Not just clothes and suits. There's also a whiskey tasting right in my wheelhouse from 11 to 6. So get to Jerry Ryan next Thursday, kick off year number 51 with the trunk sale from Mizzen and Main. Jerry Ryan Clothing and Sportswear, dressing Omaha for over 50 years.
Mostly sunny and warm for your Friday. A high today in Omaha of 83 degrees with light winds out of the north and northeast up to 10 miles an hour. Staying mostly clear to partly cloudy overnight, still comfortable with low of 56 and light northerly winds. Mostly sunny again for your Saturday, warm and breezy with a high of 85. I'm meteorologist Caitlin Harvey with KUTV Newswatch 7.
You can get a great craft beer pretty much anywhere these days. But what about the whole package? Dining out, service, and atmosphere? Come to Cunningham's Pub and Grill, home of Omaha's original smoked wings, now with 2 locations. We're bringing back Sundays at our Old Mill location this fall, where you can catch all the sports while enjoying quality food and drinks. Find your flavor and follow us online for unique daily specials and fun craft beer events. Cunningham's Pub and Grill in Old Mill and now Blackstone.
Ready to make a positive impact in a young boy's life? Join Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Midlands and become a mentor where you are matched up with a boy in the greater Omaha area. Over 50 boys are waiting for someone like you to guide and inspire them. Visit mentoromaha.org and sign up to make a difference in a boy's life. Don't wait. Make a lasting impact today.
Welcome back into the After Hours Lounge here on a Friday night. Jimmy Allen, John Schreiner, Ben Geezer back in studio with us tonight. We're brought to you by Bellevue University. If you want to keep up to date on all things Bellevue athletics, Trish Sedlick and the crew have the volleyball program absolutely rolling right now. All you got to do is download the BU Bruins app to your smartphone tonight. It's time for the Who Wants the Smoke segment. Maybe we need to retitle it the Who Wants the Drink segment, because right now it's the Nebraska Cornhuskers. The Board of Regents are set to meet next week to discuss alcohol sales at not only the Devaney Center, but Memorial Stadium as well. And John, this is something it feels like it's been a long time coming. This feels like it's a Troy Dannon thing as well, something that he was very adamant about wanting to get moving. They did the Garth Brooks concert. They literally sold out of beer before the end of the evening. Tailgates in Lincoln, quote, have not had alcohol at them ever.
And there are red cups,
and there are never thousands of red Solo cups scattered throughout Lincoln on Saturdays on game day. But I had been adamant for a long time that I don't want alcohol sales inside of Memorial Stadium, and I know I'm the outlier there. And even like we have many bones about it. I don't drink, but even when I did, I've been a proponent of this for a long time. But it feels like the tidal wave is hitting the brick wall hard enough that it is time that this becomes a thing. Because listen, it does happen everywhere else, and we're going to talk about the Storm Chasers at the end of the first hour here tonight. And congratulations to Marty Cordero and the crew out there, but like literally 90% of pro and college stadiums have alcohol sales at them. So I don't know what we're waiting on.
Well, I mean, it's coming as a point of necessity at the
Yep.
time and place we are in college athletics as well. Revenue sharing is coming, and athletic departments have to find a new way to generate excess revenue above and beyond that $22 million that they have to give to the they don't have to, but they will be giving to student athletes to stay competitive in the landscape, right? So there has to be another revenue stream. And if you're a school that's not selling beverages at your sporting events, this is an easy fix.
Yeah, and that feels like the biggest deterrent here. Like, we need to find a way to come up with more money, and we can't give it all to 1890. So we got to figure something. Like, honestly, this may be like a weird take, but if this is what prevents them from selling the rights to naming Memorial Stadium, I'm all here for it. Like,
Absolutely.
Obviously, this would never happen, but like, I don't want Mr. Worldwide being the title of my football stadium like we're seeing at FIU. But I mean, like, nothing against Pitbull. He's fine. But and congratulations to FIU and getting that money from him. But I would much rather see the guy sitting next to me at Memorial Stadium with a beer in his hand than see another logo down on the field. And not to say that's not coming still too, because I don't even think we've scratched the surface on that. But yeah, I wonder where the quote issues are going to be more, because I think at the Devaney Center, that's more of a family oriented place to watch a game. Like, there are usually more children at a volleyball game than you will see at a football game. Now, does that necessarily mean there'll be more or less problems? I don't know, and who knows? Maybe there won't ever be a problem ever, because that's notorious with alcohol to not cause problems or issues. But it feels like alcohol was prevalent enough at Memorial Stadium that it won't cause that big of a shift in what we see on Saturdays. But at the Devaney Center, that's where I kind of wonder if a little bit, and maybe even for the better, the crowd may change a little bit, get a little more rowdy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I've long made this point about the football games. Like, we know that what's going on in the tailgates, right? The people that show up to Memorial Stadium that have been at the tailgates have, on a sliding scale, some level of alcohol in their system.
Yeah.
Right. So if the issues that you're afraid of happening at the football game haven't already happened, then they're probably not going to happen just because they're now selling beer in the stadium.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think that the effect is that great.
I don't know, because
for a couple of reasons, right?
Okay.
It's not like you can just, it's not like a bar where you can just sit there and order drink after drink after
That's
drink. That's
true.
Drink after drink.
That's a good point. Well, there may be an emphasis on having beer runners up in the stands, like you see the runs and the pops and stuff. But
they're not just on demand.
Yeah, and there's probably going to be a limit on how many you can order at one time too.
I'm sure of that.
And then, obviously, when your cooler's 6 feet wide, that puts a pretty big limit on it anyway.
And the other thing is just the cost.
Yeah.
You know that beers are going to cost what, $8, $9, $10, $11. So it's price prohibitive from drinking 15 beers at the stadium.
Obviously a different crowd, but I've seen a few people put 10, 15 beers down at the CHI Center. And I feel pretty safe saying the beers at the CHI Center are probably going to cost more than the ones at Memorial will anyway.
I don't know. I don't know how to address that claim. I couldn't say. I mean, we don't know what they're going to cost at Memorial yet.
And again, the Board of Regents are still set to meet next week. This isn't officially approved. Give me a percentage on what you think the likelihood of this actually coming true is.
93.5%.
Man, I think that number is way too low. I think this is as close. I'm going to go 99.745. That's how close I think this is. I don't see a reason not to at this point. I mean, I truly believe the limited events that we've seen alcohol sold for at Memorial Stadium has been a test to see how it will go, how they can manage it, how it will go, and get procedures put in place. And now with the issue with the Salty Dogs settled over at Haymarket Park, there's already beer sales inside PBA. Like at this point, you're just not doing it for the sake of not doing it, just because it's the way it's always been.
You're not doing it because the Tom father doesn't want you to do it. That's been
I was trying to leave him out of it.
Primary reasons that it's never happened before is that Tom Osborne has been against it, and the amazing deference that they give to the former coach has prevented them from moving forward in that direction. To me, I mean, that's at least part of it. It may not be the entire reason, but it's at least some portion of the reason.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, he has had his hand on almost every decision that has been made at that university really since he retired, and
in the state.
Yeah, but I mean that goes without saying. Just because he was in office, it was an elected official. So I don't think that's necessarily as big of a shock because he got elected to do so. But like the fact that he's in all intents and purposes just a guy right now, but he still just has that effect on that university and the decisions they made. I mean, literally has been vetted for every coaching decision they've made outside of Bill Callahan since he left. It's incredible because that doesn't happen anywhere else in the country. Like when Bobby Bowden was still alive, like Florida State wasn't like, let's call Bobby Bowden and see how he feels about us hiring Jimbo Fisher. Like that stuff just wasn't happening. And
Florida's not calling Spurrier to see who should be their next head coach.
They're not, but would it surprise you if they did? Like that one might not shock me, but it's like this is and maybe it's part of what makes Nebraska unique because Tom is one of ours and obviously one of the greatest of all time to do it, and is still readily available to want to be around the program. But at some point, you got to kind of pull your big boy pants up and be like, okay, we need to make decisions for us going forward because this man has not been working for this university for over a decade now, and maybe it's okay for us to not have him in the room for these discussions. Listen, Coach Osborne is one of the smartest people you'll ever meet, and I'm not faulting the university for going to a very knowledgeable person, but at some point, you have to just make your decisions for yourself and not rely on what the head coach from the 70s to the 90s wants you to do.
100% agree. This is a monetary decision for the health of the program and the athletic department in the future.
Yeah,
and it's something people have been asking for a very long time.
And you've got the right reasons to push you in that direction now. Not even necessarily with revenue sharing and paying athletes, but the House versus Representatives lawsuit that is out there. I feel like if you're a smart athletic department / university right now, you're probably trying to stack some coin for another lawsuit that hasn't happened yet down the road, just because that seems to be the direction it's happening. Like stack checks for a rainy day, like my friend Jay-Z once said. It's one of those things that you have to be prepared for something financially now that isn't out there yet, because when and it feels like Nebraska is a little more buttoned up than UNLV and Florida is right now. But I often wonder, like, are we going to see lawsuits for unpromised NIL money at some point? Yes. Because it kind of amazes me. And I actually, let me retract that, because Jordan Rashada did file a lawsuit against the coaches at Florida that were involved in that discussion, not the university itself, but feels like by proxy, especially when revenue sharing comes into it, if they aren't able to fulfill it in some degree, it's probably going to be a bigger issue than we have even talked about at this point.
Again, this is why I have advocated for NIL to be taken in by the programs themselves, because you have too many people on the outside who have ulterior motivations and are looking to first make themselves money in this whole new landscape, right? There are predators out there who are taking advantage of this situation and taking advantage of 17 and 18-year-old kids. Like, this has to get rectified.
I agree.
And look, a way, if a school has to sell some alcohol, specifically beer, at their home games, to be able to bring all these things in-house and make it a better environment for the student athletes and make it safer for them monetarily, I'm all for it.
How many yards will Dylan Raiola throw for tomorrow in West Lafayette? John Schreiner's
All of the yards.
John Schreiner's going to tell you when we come back. If you missed the Who Wants to Smoke segment, check it out at soundcloud.com/after hours 1620 was brought to you by our friends at Controlled Comfort Heating and Air. Fall is here. That means Old Man Winter is right around the corner, and you don't want to be freezing to death in your living room. Have your HVAC unit serviced by Controlled Comfort Heating and Air. All you got to do is head over to controlledcomfort.com, work with Tony and the team. They're going to come out, check your HVAC unit, check your furnace, check your AC, make sure it's all working, and get that AC unit ready for next spring as well. It's Controlled Comfort. Check out controlledcomfort.com tonight. We'll be right back. Give you our predictions for tomorrow here on 1620 The Zone. Hey, everybody, it's Jimmy Allen here for Bob Williams with Williams Law. Listen, you heard Bob on our show on Wednesday night. He was telling you all the legal ramifications the Pac-12 and the Mountain West are facing. You don't have to be a big college football entity to work with a lawyer of the quality of Bob Williams. All you have to do is head over to WilliamsLawLLC.com tonight. Work with Bob and his team for any litigation you're facing, whether it be legal, whether it be civil. He can handle it all. He'll work with you. He'll walk you through your rights, explain the situation, and tell you exactly what you're facing from a legal standpoint. Head over to WilliamsLawLLC.com. Not only is Bob and his team going to do that, they're going to do it for free. They're going to give you a free, no obligation legal consultation to make sure you're the right fit for them, make sure they're the right fit for you, and represent you the best way possible at your court hearing. It's Williams Law. Head over to WilliamsLawLLC.com tonight.
Are you looking to be part of a winning tradition? The Bellevue University Bruins could be the right fit for you. Whether on the court or on the field, track or course, our student athletes strive and succeed. This year, Bellevue teams and individuals have combined to win 11 conference championships, with 8 teams qualifying for their national tournaments. Plus, nearly 50 student athletes were also named to all conference teams. Find out more about our tradition of excellence at BUBruins.com.
You're counting on your team to win, so why not prove it? By placing your bets at Warhorse Sportsbook. Their win is your win. Put your money where your mouth is on nearly every sporting event. Use the Warhorse app to check odds and build your bets before placing your wagers in person at Warhorse Casino, including live in-game betting. No bets, no glory. Wagers may only be placed on Nebraska-based teams when played outside the state of Nebraska. Must be 21 or older to gamble. Gambling problem? Call 1-833-BET-OVER.
Are you watching the water slowly seep down the drain again? Go with a local solution. Go with trusted. AX Plumbing is here to help. With over 20 years of serving the metro area, AX Plumbing can do it all, from residential to commercial. They can even help with the new build installation service. Head over to axpservice.com today. There's financing available to qualified buyers and military discount too. Check out axpservice.com today. AX Plumbing. They'll leave your place cleaner than they found it.
Friday night here on 1620 The Zone. I'm Jimmy Allen. That's John Schreiner. We are brought to you by Bellevue University. Listen, if you're looking just to get out in the community and support some athletics and some youth or some college athletes that maybe don't get the support they deserve, check out BUBruins.com to check out all the sports schedules going on for fall sports at Bellevue University. Get out and support local athletes today. Speaking of local athletes in Lincoln headed to West Lafayette tomorrow to take on Purdue and the Boilermakers, Hudson Card and the boys. First road game for Nebraska, and it's going to be interesting. Listen, not great vibes coming out of Friday night. I think this team is going to be fine. I really do believe shortened week, weird Friday night game. I think all that does play into a factor now. I'm not making any excuses for anybody. I think Nebraska was the better team, and I do like. No offense to Matt and Lincoln. I feel like Nebraska got outcoached on Friday to some degree as well. And Tony White weighed in on that. And I really believe that this team is going to come out with a sense of purpose to rectify what happened on Friday night. And I think that's directly coming from this coaching staff as well. It was not only do I believe it was a wake-up call for the players, I really think it was a wake-up call for a lot of the coaches who may have been riding a little high and to some degree a little bit deservedly so and feeling themselves a little bit. And it was a little bit come back down to earth moment where, okay, maybe this team isn't as polished and as ready as we thought they were going to be. So to me, for all the numbers we're about to discuss in a minute, I think it all has to be over or high numbers for whoever ends up leading each category just to get everybody feeling good about where the team is going forward. Like if we're talking about a loss on Tuesday, I don't know how I feel about the rest of this season going forward. Like this is the one team left on the schedule that even if a lot of things go wrong, you should probably win by double digits.
You can't lose to this one. Yeah.
It would be the most inexcusable loss of this season. I don't care how the rest of the season goes. Like to me, UCLA is the second worst team in the Big Ten, and I think they're 10 times better than Purdue is. Like that's how little I think about this Purdue team.
Yeah.
I don't think the people in West Lafayette truly had an understanding of what they had in Jeff Brom. I don't think there was a single season where he didn't massively overachieve as the head coach of the Boilermakers. We're kind of seeing that in Louisville right now, but it's like I honestly think he's been a top 10 coach in the country for a very long time.
He's one of those guys who can do more with less, for sure.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly
obviously a very good recruiter.
Somebody that needs to do more with less tomorrow is Nebraska's running game. Who do you think is going to be the leading rusher for Nebraska tomorrow?
And so I'm going a little off the board here, and I'm sort of reading some tea leaves and looking at Purdue's run defense. I'm going with Emmett Johnson this week.
See, I thought I was going to be alone in that. I am as well.
With Matt Rule coming out in the press conference and saying specifically, I want to get Emmett more involved in the running game, and Purdue being susceptible to the giving up the big run. I think we've seen Emmett Johnson be the most probable to get the big run. I think he might have a couple of long ones. I think he ends up leading the team.
Are you, I don't want to say done, but has the Ramir Johnson experiment kind of run its course for you to any degree?
No, because he's a great third down back. I think he's really good in the passing situations as a receiver out of the backfield, running some of that stuff. I don't think he's done it all. I think he's a nice complementary piece.
It felt like that play last week against Illinois where he stepped out of bounds and then came back in, or just didn't even come back in, clearly just stepped out of bounds and caught the ball in the end zone. That felt like a moment, and not a good one for.
Well, I mean, there were a lot of bad moments in that game.
Yeah, I mean for him specifically, like the vibes around him going back, like he only came back in for 2 more plays and only got 1 more carry. Yeah. And you have to wonder if his lack of field awareness or situational awareness is kind of what's been hindering him. Is like, because we've seen him get buried on the depth chart by coach after coach after coach, and then have these explosive plays because his talent is clearly there. But like, we've never seen that moment, and you have to wonder. And again, it could be an outlier, it could be a one-off, just a misunderstanding of where his feet were, etc. But you have to wonder if situations like that in practice is what's kept him off the field.
It's hard to say, man, without watching it. But like, I still think he's got a role to play. I think they need him to be that third down back. I think we've heard in the past that he's the best in blitz pickup and pass protection of the running backs, and that's why he plays on third down, and also because he's a good receiver. You need him still for the rest of this season.
That we have heard that, and we've seen it in certain instances. There was a couple he clearly missed on Friday night, though. So we'll see how
the entire offensive unit for Nebraska got fooled a couple of times.
Yep, that's very true. I don't want to just put that on Ramir. Who will be Nebraska's leading receiver on Saturday? I'll go first because I really liked what I saw out of Jamal Banks on Friday, and I think he has the potential to be the leading receiver on this team every single Saturday. Obviously, I just think Isaiah Nayor is that guy. I really do. It feels like he's the one that Dylan is the most comfortable with. I feel like he's been the best at getting separation of the entire wide receiver group this season, and he's got a nose for the ball, man. He seems to find it, and more importantly, it seems to find him when he's there.
I'm taking a big swing on this one too. Just like, and maybe I'm overthinking it. That's probably the case. I usually do that. Knowing what Purdue's run defense is, right? And knowing that I think Nebraska's going to just try to run the ball straight at them a bunch, which is going to pull a safety down into the box. There's going to be an opportunity for some big plays down the field in the passing game. And who is most likely to make those big plays down the field? Jalen Lloyd. Yeah. I think Jalen Lloyd has a chance to get behind a safety a couple of times in this game. I don't think he's going to have the most catches, but I think he might have the most yards at the end of the day.
I dubbed Friday night the Jamal Banks game. This has a very good potential to be the Jalen Lloyd game. I think so. I do agree with that. I still think Isaiah Nayor is going to be your leading receiver. It would not surprise me if you have 3 or 4 passes that find their way to Jalen Lloyd for 15 to 20 yards. With that being said, that means that Dylan Raiola is going to be able to throw for a lot of yards. Over or under 225 yards for young Dylan on Saturday.
This is a good number that you've got here.
The line is set at 222.5 by our friends in Las Vegas.
And if it was, I think it's going to be right around that. I'm going to go a slight under. I think it's going to be around 220 because I just feel like Nebraska's going to run the ball so much and shorten the game.
I'm going to go under, but for a different reason. I think there's a really good chance Nebraska is up a lot heading into the fourth quarter.
Jimmy, you've said this every week.
I know, but hey, I've only been wrong once. But I listen. I'm going to say right now, there's no excuse for them not to be up by a lot heading into the fourth quarter. And I don't know if we're going to see Dylan in the fourth quarter. That may hinder him getting over that 225. So I'm going to go under as well. Who will be the leading tackler on defense for the Nebraska Cornhuskers on Saturday?
I'm riding with John Bullock. I was right last week. I felt like it was a prime game for him to make a whole bunch of tackles. He did. He made 9 tackles last week. This is the same kind of game for me. They're going to give the ball to Maccabee a whole bunch. They may be behind late, which might hinder some of that, but I still think it's Bullock.
And that's the reason I'm going Jamari Butler. I do think they get behind. I think there's going to be a concentrated effort to take Maccabee out of this game. I think that he's probably the only player in black and gold on Saturday that's going to be keeping Nebraska's defensive staff up late at night. Ty Robinson feels like he should have a really good game as well, but I think he's going to be the focal point of that offensive line. I think Nash has the potential to benefit from that as well. But for me, Jamari Butler, he looked like he was on a mission on Friday and looked like the most distraught player of the entire defense, just from a body language standpoint. He's going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to have a great game on Saturday. We'll go to a portion of this team that has kept Nebraska fans up at night. It's the special teams unit. Over under 1.5 field goals attempted on Saturday by Nebraska's special team unit.
I think it's under. I think that Nebraska is going to score touchdowns in this game, but there's probably 1 field goal in there somewhere. So I'm going under. I think they'll make 1.
Let me change it up then. Over under half of a field goal passed up on by the coaching staff inside 30 yards on Saturday.
Over.
Yeah, I agree.
They're going to go for it on 4th down.
And I don't necessarily know if that's a statement about where the special teams unit is right now. More of they think they could probably move the ball against this defense.
You have to. You just have to.
Yeah. Which brings us to the final score of the game. Nebraska, as of right now, a 9.5-point favorite over the Purdue Boilermakers. What say you about the final score?
I've got this one, Nebraska 38-17. I think it's very similar in scope to the Colorado game. I think it's a short game because both teams are going to try to run the ball. Because I don't think Purdue can throw. I don't believe in Hudson Card, but I think there's probably a garbage time touchdown in there somewhere. So that's my prediction.
If Purdue scores 17 points, fire Tony White. I say that jokingly, but that offense should not be able to score 17 points.
But they
on this
can
defense.
run the ball, Jimmy. They can run it.
Can they run it against that front
run it.
7? Because I don't know if or front 6. I don't know if that's the case, man. I really don't. Give me Nebraska. I do like third. No, give me 42-3.
No.
I think it's an absolute. Give me. Now I'm going to go on an even bigger one. Give me 42-3, and Nebraska scores a defensive touchdown on Saturday as well. If you missed our predictions or how we think the numbers are going to line up against Purdue, check it out at SoundCloud.com/AfterHours1620 was brought to you by our good friends at Cunningham's Pub. If you missed Wing Wednesday, don't worry about it. You can head over to Cunningham's any day of the week, including Sunday, where they do have Sunday Ticket, and they will have all of the college football games on all of their 18 to 24 TVs, depending on which location you go to, where you can enjoy football this weekend at Cunningham's Pub. We'll be right back. Omaha's got a new champion. Who is it? We're going to tell you on the other side of the break. We come back. You're at 1620 The Zone. Hey, everybody, it's Jimmy Allen here for Forsman's Finest Decks. Listen, if you are sick of maintaining your deck, why not try a composite deck? Forsman's Finest Decks come out and build you that non-traditional deck that's way easier to maintain. They'll even put a roof over it and add that something to your house that's been missing. Head over to Forsman'sFinest.com to have your dream deck built by Travis and crew this winter. Forsman's Finest Decks, building the finest decks in Omaha.
Don't keep up with the Joneses. Blow the Joneses out of the water and have everyone talking about your house this summer. Let Forsman's Finest Decks come build you a deck, put a cover on it, and give your house the much-needed facelift it deserves. Forsman's Finest Decks has been improving homes in the Omaha area for more than half a decade. With over 135 five-star reviews, you're not going to regret your decision to enjoy the finer things. Check out Forsman'sFinest.com and have your dream deck built this summer. Forsman's Finest Decks, building the finest decks in Omaha.
Now back to After Hours with Jimmy Allen on 1620 The Zone.
Welcome back inside the After Hours Lounge on a Friday night, brought to you by Bellevue University. You keep up to date on everything going on with Bellevue Athletics by downloading the BU Bruins app to your smartphone tonight. It is time for the social media soundbite. And for anybody that didn't get a chance to make it out to Warner Park last night, want to know how the Storm Chasers did in their championship appearance in a great Game 3 last night. Here was the final call of the game out at Warner Park last night.
4 times Omaha was the champion of the American Association. 3 times champions of the Pacific Coast League. Are they the 2024 International League champs? The pitch. Sky to the air to center. Waters under it. He camps, makes the catch. Yes, they are the Omaha Storm Chasers 2024 International League champions.
So the Omaha Storm Chasers get it done last night, and they really had the game locked up heading into the 7th inning. They win by a score of 7-3, not allowing another run. After the 4th inning, they had a 3-run 6th and absolutely controlled that entire game last night against the Clippers, and in dominant fashion come out. And obviously a lot of news around Warner Park right now. The Storm Chasers get sold to a new entity, but they are going to stay in Omaha, all signs point to, and the new ownership group has a championship banner to unveil on opening day next year. But just a great season. We talked to Marty Cordero at the beginning of the season, John, and he felt really good about where his team was, but felt like this may be the year before the year. And obviously they're getting ready to head off to Las Vegas now for the next stage in this season after winning the International League Championship. But just a great night out at Warner Park, a great 3-game series. I was really glad. Like, listen, the Clippers came out and won the first game, and Omaha had to battle back to win that second game on Thursday night to set up this third game. And the thing, and for those of you that are listening on the radio didn't get to see in that clip, was there were not a whole lot of empty seats behind home plate.
No.
Last night, and I didn't get to make it through to the game because I had to do preparation for my football game tonight. But I drove by Warner Park because it's right down the street from my podcast studio, and there didn't look like there was a whole lot of empty parking spaces in the lot either. And Omaha just tends to show up if a team is winning and it's something that they're proud of. And listen, that's exactly what the Storm Chasers were all season.
Well, it's been such a well-run franchise, right? Like, they win consistently. They treat the fans well. They provide a good atmosphere. It is what you want out of minor league baseball, right? Like, you want a team that produces good results, is fun, has a good stadium to go to, and like, you can't fault them on any of those points. The Storm Chasers are just a good minor league franchise.
The one thing that has always blown me away about Marty Cordero, and not to make this about him because it's mainly about the team, but the point you just made was it is always a good atmosphere, and there's never really any excuses as to why they can't put on a good show or experience. And the thing that blows me away about Marty specifically is he's not from here. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that as a guy who wanted to get into baseball to coach, to be a manager. He wanted to be a first base coach, and that's how he got into minor league baseball. And the coaching staff that he wanted to work for was like, hey, we don't have any spots right now. You can sell billboard advertising for us. And that's how Marty Cordero got his start in minor league baseball. And he never lost sight of the fact that his love for the game is really secondary to the environment and the production you have to put on, because let's call it what it is. Minor league baseball is an event that baseball happens at. And that's how the successful ones are successful, to not make it about mainly the product on the field, but let's get the butts in the seats to make sure that there's somebody there to watch the product on the field. And to me, the Omaha Storm Chasers are second to none in minor league baseball when it comes to that aspect.
And look, man, like, do you want to see guys who are going to go and play in the majors? Because you can go to Warner Park and see them. Like Bobby Witt Jr. Hello, he was in Omaha. Like
Paul Skeens was in Omaha.
There every single year, there's a dude who plays for the Storm Chasers who's on the big club, seemingly the next season, right? Like, they just do.
Vinny Pasquantino.
They do such a good job of putting the guys in Omaha who are on their way to Kansas City. I mean, a lot of times in minor league baseball, it's like the guys who play in like high A or double A are getting ready to go to the bigs, and triple A is sort of like a halfway in between point. But I love the way that they do it, where it's like, no, we're going to give our AAA affiliate the guys who are ready to make the jump and give them to Omaha. And I love that that's the way that the Royals and the Storm Chasers have worked that out, and you get to see those future stars.
And I kind of brought this up. There's a lot of discussion about moving Kauffman downtown in Kansas City and tearing that park down. And I wonder if they get into a pinch where they may need a park, or maybe like construction doesn't go the way they need it to, and they need somewhere to play a couple of games. It feels like that relationship is strong enough where you could get a really cool moment in Omaha where the Royals may just need a ballpark to play at. They come north for a couple of games and play a few series up here in Omaha. And I think that would be really good, not only for the Omaha area, but the relationship between the two cities. Because anytime you head down to Kansas City to watch a baseball game, you're going to catch a lot of Nebraska license plates in that parking lot. And obviously a lot of that is because of the relationship that we've always had with either the Omaha Royals, the Golden Spikes, or the Storm Chasers, and the relationship with that franchise. But there's a reason we carry Omaha Royals games, or excuse me, Kansas City Royals games on our sister station 1180, because there is the need for it in this town. And I think it'd just be a really cool way to kind of strengthen that relationship as well. I know it's an outlier, and I know it's not probably something very likely to happen, but I think it would be really cool.
It would be super cool. I just don't know if the park's big enough.
When was the last time you went to a Royals game? Oh, are you talking about like you talking about the dimensions? Okay. I thought you were talking about like to hold a crowd.
I don't know that Warner Park is big enough for a major league team to play in.
Listen, I'm a Yankees fan, and if we can have a right field wall that a toddler can crawl over, like I think they could make Warner Park. If you could go dig a hole in a cornfield to play the Field of Dreams games and let Aaron Judge hit lasers 900 feet into a cornfield, you could probably make a AAA field work for a couple of games.
Yeah. Like you said, it seems unlikely, but it would certainly be a cool thing. I would like it if they did again, like they did a few years ago at the College World Series when they played a major league game before the College World Series started at the Chuck downtown. That would be a cool thing. I love that.
And that's probably more likely the case. Just for my own like selfishness, I just want to see what the turnout would be at Warner Park. And what it would look like to see a major league game played in that atmosphere. And I think that the networks would love it, the aesthetic of it too. I think that's the main reason they did the Field of Dreams game over and over again, just because I think the first one they anticipated only being a one-off, and then everybody looked at the setting, how unique it was, and went, no, we have something here. We need to make something out of it.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Winter Classic in the NHL, right? Like
good point.
The first time they did that, it was like, hey, this is a cool thing we're going to do. And then the response was so tremendous. They're like, nope, we're doing this every year now.
Oh, that's what lightning in a bottle looks like. We haven't talked about it much, but the Oakland A's have played their last game seemingly in Alameda County and getting ready for what looks like still the move to Las Vegas, but they kind of feel like the redheaded stepchild of all of sports right now. And nobody really seems overly eager to have them anywhere. Do you think we've seen the end of Major League Baseball in Oakland as a whole?
Yes, I do.
I do too, man. Like, I know there's always those people who are gonna be like, well, the Rams went back to LA after being in St. Louis after all these years, but like, it just feels like the Oakland community is just losing out on everything because of the mass movements out of California. And as somebody that was just recently in Oakland, like the amount of boarded up buildings and former companies out in that part of the country is really sad to see. And it doesn't feel like they're going to have the market and the amount of people out there that you need on that side of the bay to sustain a pro franchise maybe ever again.
There's another thing you didn't mention is that the amount of land that it takes to build a proper stadium in the San Francisco Bay Area is tremendously expensive, like cost prohibitively expensive. And
have you ever been to that building?
I have not been to the building. I've driven by it.
It's a dump. And that's putting it nice. I remember the first time I saw it, I drove by and I was like, that has to be a practice facility. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh no, that is actually the Oakland Coliseum. That is not great.
Well, and then you think about moving to Vegas, where
land's not cheap there either.
Sure, but there's a lot of it.
Yep.
There's plenty of it out there.
I don't know if you know this about the desert. It's not that inhibited.
Yeah. And like, look, San Francisco's got like some of the most expensive real estate in not only the country but in the world right now.
And there isn't
So
a ton of it.
finding a place to build a stadium in that area is difficult and expensive. So, like from the financial perspective, I don't necessarily blame the A's for moving, but man, that is a dirty shot at those fans. Like that, it sucks.
Well, and it's such a bad time to do it. Because not that the Oakland A's franchise has ever been great, but like that, they're just a really bad team too. Like it's a really crappy time to move because nobody wants a bad product, and that's really what you're getting with the A's right now.
It's tough. It's a tough situation all around, man. Like, and pro sports in Oakland pretty much done now. Like that's it, and I don't think they're getting another franchise from anywhere anytime soon.
If you missed the social media soundbite tonight, check it out at soundcloud.com/afterhours1620 or wherever you may find your podcast at. It was brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing. If you're the decision maker in your business, or maybe you own your own company and you don't own the rights to your Google page, do you know you could change that? Work with our friends at Pixel Fire Marketing. Hang out with Courtney, the Google gal. She's going to walk you through how to get the rights to your Google business profile. Also, she's going to update it and make it look great to represent your business in the best way possible. Check out pixelfiremarketing.com for more details tonight. We're buying or selling with ourselves when we come back here on the 1620 The Zone. Hey, everybody, it's Jimmy Allen here for AX Plumbing. I've been telling you for a while, Nick and his team are second to none. They're a plumber that's based right here out of Papillion, and they are able to do anything from home to residential. They could do it all. They were out at Going Vertical a couple months ago. They were able to install a new urinal for those guys. They came to my house. They got the tree roots out of my piping and long-term fixed my plumbing issues that I've been having. We haven't had one problem since then. We used to have a basement toilet that backed up all the time. They were able to run a 300-foot snake to find some tree roots we didn't even know were there. They could fix your problem going forward long term as well. And even if you don't have the money to pay for it right now, there's even financing available with AX Plumbing. Head over to axpservice.com tonight. Work with Nick and the crew and get your plumbing issues fixed long term. AX Plumbing, locally owned, and they will leave your home or business cleaner than they found it.
Don't keep up with the Joneses. Blow the Joneses out of the water and have everyone talking about your house this summer. Let Forsman's Finest Decks come build you a deck, put a cover on it, and give your house the much-needed facelift it deserves. Forsman's Finest Decks has been improving homes in the Omaha area for more than half a decade. With over 135 five-star reviews, you're not going to regret your decision to enjoy the finer things. Check out Forsman'sFinest.com and have your dream deck built this summer. Forsman's Finest Decks, building the finest decks in Omaha.
The leaves are on the ground and the footballs are in the air. That means it's time for a fall tune-up. Locally owned and operated with 18-month same-as-cash financing available, Controlled Comfort is your one-stop shop for all your HVAC needs. With over 350 5-star Google reviews, Controlled Comfort is the cream of the crop. Head over to ControlledComfort.com for all your HVAC needs today.
Controlled Comfort keeps it under control. Yeah.
Top of the second hour here on 1620 The Zone, brought to you by Pyramid Contractors. You don't become the number one roofer in Omaha for over a decade by accident. Head over to pyramidroof.com to get your windows, gutters, siding, or roof replaced this fall. Pyramidroof.com, where you never have to settle for less. It's time for buy or sell. Since Ben Geezer is a mute tonight, we will have to ask ourselves these buy or sell questions. And John, I'll go ahead and start us off. Last night, the NFL game on Thursday night was Cowboys at Giants. The Giants do not score a single touchdown in that game, but still only lose by 5 points. Buy or sell, you feel worse about the Dallas Cowboys today than you did on Wednesday?
Well, I guess the sort of de facto answer is buy, because I don't feel better.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, not at all convincing. Didn't look good doing it. And gave the ball back to the Giants at the end of the game with a chance to go win it. So, I mean, did we believe the Giants could without Malik Neighbors? No, not at all. But it still felt like there's something wrong with this team right now.
The Giants rushed for 26 yards last night.
Is that good?
And lost by 5 points. Yeah, and listen, Micah Parsons banged up with an ankle injury after last night too. You did get the one CeeDee Lamb touchdown, which I think made some people feel better. There wasn't a whole lot to write home about after that happened either. So yeah, I'm with you. I sell, because I thought this team was going to be really good this year, specifically after they got everybody's deals done. If you're Jerry Jones or his accountant right now, you probably don't feel great either. So yeah, I sell.
I have a question for you about the game as well.
Okay.
The NFL game. So, as you mentioned, the Cowboys beat the very bad Giants, not at all convincingly. And things do not look good in Dallas. So, are you buying or selling that with all the turmoil around the Cowboys, Dak Prescott should actually consider jumping into the free agent pool at the end of the year?
I buy. I do. And I think for the longest time, his problem is he's loved this situation. I truly believe that Dak Prescott loves being the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. I think he really relishes in that moment. I don't think he does anymore, though. And not because of the way things are going right now. I feel like this contract negotiation, specifically this time, with all the other things going on around it, has kind of soured that for him. And it just feels like the right time, right? And it's really hard. And listen, this is not a direct comparison, but it's really hard to see Tom Brady leave the Patriots and go to Tampa and have sustained success, or see Aaron Rodgers leave Green Bay. And obviously the first season didn't go the way many people thought it would, but the last couple of games have been better for the Jets, and see him be able to have success. If you're Dak Prescott and you're the guy that led the league in passing last year, to not feel like you can go somewhere else and be able to duplicate the success that you've had in Dallas going forward somewhere else. And it feels like up until about 4 months ago, him and Jerry Jones had this really great relationship. That does not, even though they paid him, that does not feel like that's the case. And it kind of feels like Jerry's ready to move on too. And that's probably, if not equally as important, maybe even more.
Yeah, and I think we may be in for a coaching change at the end of the year for Dallas as well. So
I didn't understand the hire when they made it, so I 100% agree.
It could be a complete overhaul in Dallas, and I agree with you. I think Dak needs to move on.
And I'm gonna. This may be surprising to some people, but I don't think it's gonna be some of the names that we've heard thrown around. Like, it's never going to be Deion Sanders. I'm going to come out right now and say that. But I don't like. It feels like the Dallas brass are having these conversations with Jerry Jones about, okay, you got to kind of stop saying that we're not urgently trying to pay our players, and you can't really do all these like. We here's the curtain. Just be the man behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz for a little while. And
Bill Belichick's not coming back to coach the Cowboys.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
If he does, I think that you're going to not only see Dak Prescott test the free agent waters, but probably anybody else on that roster that has the ability to do so. And that's not a good look. Also, Micah Parsons has the ability to do that next in the following season as well. Not next year, but the year after that. He may be lobbying for trades. I don't know if you noticed about Micah Parsons. He's not shy to say things publicly.
He has a podcast. If
you may see him lobbying to get out of Dallas if Bill Belichick comes in.
Yeah. What's your next one?
You may see him lobbying to get out of Dallas even if Bill Belichick doesn't come in. We've got a big matchup tomorrow in college football. No, not Purdue, Nebraska, but we get to see the first real test for Kalen DeBoer's Alabama. They get to host Georgia in this one. Does this say anything about Kalen DeBoer if they win this game? Are you still in the mindset of these are still Nick Saban's players? It's too early to deem this Kalen DeBoer's team. Buy or sell if Alabama wins tomorrow? It says anything about Kalen DeBoer?
I'll buy. It says something about him. It says that he has done a great job transitioning into his role as the head coach at Alabama and keeping the train on the tracks. It says that he has done a good job of, not necessarily changing the culture, but keeping what works from the Alabama culture that was created by Nick Saban. So it's not a totally moot point if they win this game. It does not say that he is to be anointed and will be the long-term spiritual successor to Nick Saban. You have to be very careful with that. But it will say something, sure, if he wins the game.
I think it says a ton, and specifically for the reason that I think Jalen Milroe has looked like a completely different player. I think he was serviceable a year ago. I think he's a really, really good quarterback. And listen, I have been all the way off the Jalen Milroe train up until this point, but I think it shows you that what Kalen DeBoer was able to do with Michael Penix is transferable to other players. And if you can make Jalen Milroe look like Michael Penix, I think you could probably make water into wine to make that comparison. And if you really look at the way that Kalen DeBoer has done this, it doesn't feel like Nick Saban's team. It feels like it's got his fingerprints all over it. Like when you watch Alabama's offense, it looks a lot like what we saw in Seattle last year. And I think we're going to see more of that going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that Kalen DeBoer is eventually going to be the victim of Nick Saban's success because what Nick Saban did, I don't think is sustainable long-term for anyone.
That's a good point.
And
nobody else has done it.
No, when you follow the legend, people are eventually going to say, well, why isn't it like it used to be? And there's going to be cries.
But you know what cures that?
Winning.
What do you got for me?
All right. The Mountain West is at 7. They got commitments from 7 schools, and they're now targeting the powerhouses of Texas State and Northern Illinois, potentially. Buy or sell that the model for the Mountain West is sustainable.
I don't know about you, but when I think of the state of Texas, I think about mountains. Listen, I mean, I wonder how close we are to completely rebranding of names of conferences.
Yeah.
Because, listen, yes, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, and the SEC obviously have their own value that comes along with it. I don't know how much the Mountain West name carries in value. But, yeah, listen, everybody wants a piece of the pie, and if you can bring in any kind of football revenue, it maybe even to some degree men's basketball, because we're seeing people heavily targeting Gonzaga. I really feel like, and we're going to talk about this later in the show, but whatever is about to come out of the Big Ten SEC meetings between the athletic departments and the schools themselves next week, it feels like there's something we don't know. I have no idea what that could be, and I know
you don't know it.
And I know I'm conspiracy theory guy, but the fact that people have made the push to go get UConn, and people have made the push to go get the folks in Spokane, Washington, and get Gonzaga on board with their conferences in the Big 12, like like it's one thing if the Big East were to do it because they only have men's basketball, but if you're a conference that has football and you're targeting schools that have men's basketball as their premier sport and no football team, that tells me that there's something missing from the equation. Like, is there a rule going to be in place where you have to have X amount of members of your conference? Like, it's something like that. It feels like it's on the horizon of to be a part of revenue sharing, or to maybe be able to make X amount of dollars without a salary cap on it as a program from TV revenue. You have to be a member of a conference of X amount of schools. Something like that feels like we're going to get some information from a numbers-based thing, because it doesn't feel like, hey, everybody's in a mad dash to get 20 teams because it's a cool round number. Like, I feel like we're going to get some information about, if you want to have a seat at the table, your conference needs to have X amount of schools in it, and they need to have sports A, B, and C. And I think the Mountain West gets there, and I don't think it would surprise me if a team from the Atlantic Coast ends up in that conference.
Yeah, I actually don't think that their model is sustainable in the current situation with college football.
You're not super excited to see Sacramento State in the Pac-12 either?
They just don't have the schools with the fan bases and the population centers that are going to drive enough eyeballs to keep them relevant with where I think the sport is going, right? Which is a smaller elite group of schools that control everything. And while they'll probably still play football as a conference in some form or capacity, none of those schools are going to be playing with the big boys.
See, but if you can raise the stakes and make it mean something like playing for a Mountain West title, I think that drives eyes to the product. I think that's the reason people love MACtion as much as they do. A, because it's something to bet on during the middle of the week, but B, like
Tuesday.
It's not a preseason football game. It has some sort of relevance that you can relate to. Like, people know that the MAC championship is eventually played at the beginning of December. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's still somewhat relatable. This show is relatable. You can keep listening to it for the next 45 minutes here on 1620 The Zone. We'll be right back talking about the weekend that is in the NFL, and tell you our favorite games to watch and a whole lot more as the After Hours Lounge rolls on. If you missed Buy or Sell Tonight, check it out at soundcloud.com/After-Hours1620. was brought to you by Controlled Comfort Heating and Air. Listen, I've told you a bunch of times. I'll keep telling you, because Jake and the crew were so great when they came out to my house while John, Dan, and I were in Los Angeles for the Crawford fight. Controlled Comfort Heating and Air came out, and they were able to diagnose my AC problem within an hour. That's right. My wife called them. They showed up an hour later. The problem was fixed an hour after that. And when it was 100 degrees outside, Controlled Comfort was able to get my HVAC unit back up and running and get my house cooled down within a 2-hour time frame. They can help you out this winter or spring as well. All you got to do is head over to controlledcomfort.com and work with the crew. We will be right back talking about the weekend in the NFL as the After Hours Lounge rolls on here on 1620 The Zone.
Hey, everybody. John Schreiner here for Bob at Williams Law. We like to have a lot of fun on the show. We're often unserious. We don't take ourselves very seriously. But one thing we do take seriously is legal representation. Because if you've got a legal situation hanging around in your life that you don't have resolved yet, maybe you don't even understand fully what the charges that you're being faced with are, or perhaps your rights in a civil case, then you need to get hold of Bob at Williams Law. 402-522-6317. That's the number you call when you need legal advice. Bob's going to give you a free, no obligation legal consultation. He'll sit you down, walk you through the process, explain how he would represent you and the charges and the legal situation that you are facing. It's no obligation, so there's nothing up front. Just get the advice from Bob and see if it works for you. If it's a good relationship, we'd love to have you as a client. 402-522-6317. Get the answers you're looking for and check out WilliamsLawLLC.com.
Your Omaha area forecast from the Godfather's Pizza Weather Center and KETV News Watch 7.
When you shop local, you help strengthen our community. So if you need roof repair, gutters, siding, even windows, call local Pyramid Contractors. They're the #1 roofer in Omaha for more than a dozen years. Let Pyramid Contractors come and give you a free estimate. Give them a call at 402-502-9300. That's 402-502-9300. Or visit them online at
PyramidRoof.com. Never settle for less.
Hi, I'm Amber Bess. If you're searching for a real estate advisor who is a skilled problem solver, Amber Bess of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Real Estate stands out. If you're a first-time home buyer, navigating through life's changes, or you just want to upgrade your home, my expertise and dedication will get you the best deal possible. With me, expect nothing short of personalized attention and seamless transactions. Why settle for the rest when you can have the best? Visit amberbest.com. That's Amber, BESS.com, and buy with the best today.
Now back to After Hours with Jimmy Allen on 1620 The Zone.
Welcome back inside the After Hours Lounge on a Friday night edition of our show. Again, we are pre-recorded, so if anything we're talking about tonight is something you want to talk about, unfortunately, we'll catch you on Tuesday. We'd love to get your thoughts. We are brought to you by our friends at Pyramid Contractors tonight. If you are dealing with the seasonal storm still affecting your home today, head over to pyramidroof.com to book a free estimate with Kyle and the team tonight. John, it is a pretty boring slate of NFL games this weekend, and I was trying to come up with an exercise we could do here tonight to kind of go over some of the best games this weekend. Even though the NFL is king, I don't know if you could call any of these games the best game of the weekend, because some of them are pretty blah. But I mean, if anybody stands above the rest, it's got to be Bills at Ravens. And the only reason I don't say that that's obviously the marquee matchup, because listen, it is the Sunday night game and it is two perennial powers in the AFC. The Ravens are coming off of a 1-2 record coming into this game, with their only win being a one. They squeaked out against the Cowboys last week. It kind of feels, and listen, this is in Baltimore, but it kind of feels like the Bills are prime position to go in and roll the Ravens, despite being a 2.5 point underdog. John, you're muted. Let's try this again. Kind of feels like the Bills should go to roll the Ravens despite being a 2.5 point underdog.
Yeah, the Bills look real, man. Like they look really good, and the pieces change, but McDermott and Allen stay the same, and everything looks like it is just on the tracks. I think the best game of the week might be Seahawks Lions on Monday. Like that one might provide the most intrigue.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and because I think to your point, I think we know the Bills are for real. Are the Seahawks for real? Because they've looked pretty good through this small part of the season.
And they've done it through 2 games without their starting running back, who's been out with an injury. So
yeah, and Kenneth Walker is still listed as a possible go this week too, so they could look even better.
I mean, does Saints Falcons do anything for you? Like,
so you've been on the bandwagon before Sunday that you thought the Saints were for real. Did anything change your opinion in that game against the Eagles? Because that was a little bit of a stinker for everybody involved.
It was not a good game. It was not a fun game to watch. But that's kind of how the Eagles are playing this year, I think.
That's a good point.
They're kind of mucking it up. And the Falcons probably should have beat the Chiefs. Like, they're honestly.
Yeah, realistically.
So I don't know. That one may be a little intrigue there. I don't know. But you're right. The slate is not like, it's not an all-timer by any means.
No.
It's like the good teams are playing bad teams, and that's what we get this week.
Where are you at with the Vikings? Because for me, and we're going to get to this in my Superdog picks, and I had a little bit of a spoiler alert. I was very much in a wait-and-see mode, despite, listen, they've racked up some wins against some notable foes, the 49ers specifically, but I looked at it like they blew out the Giants. Everybody's going to blow out the Giants, unless you're the Cowboys, apparently. But they manhandled Houston last week. And to me, that was a little bit more of an eye-opener, because I don't know how much you can grade teams against San Francisco right now when they're really as banged up as they are. So I looked at that win as, okay, it's obviously a very good win, but I didn't know if you could really make anything of that win of the Vikings over the 49ers. Now, after what they did to Houston last week, I think Minnesota might be for real, which is scary when you talk about Sam Darnold being at the helm. But when you have all those weapons, listen, there was a couple fantasy leagues that I drafted JJ McCarthy in, where you had to take a rookie specifically, and it was a multi-quarterback league because of the weapons he was going to have around him. I thought he was set up for to be successful more than any other rookie quarterback, and we're kind of seeing that come to fruition. But I feel like Sam Darnold has enough experience to where he can manage the game enough for that team to not only go on a deep run, but even maybe start flirting with Super Bowl contention.
Yeah, it looks different than we thought it was going to in Minnesota, right? Like, Darnold's top 15 in the NFL in passing yards right now, and he's got Justin Jefferson to throw to. Like, that's no small point to ignore.
Last time I checked, he's still good.
Yep. But man, it just did not expect this. Like, you felt like you were transitioning out of the Kirk Cousins era. You've drafted a rookie quarterback, and like maybe there's a transition period here, but man, they have hit the ground running. And this is a big spot for the Packers too, because it looks right now like the Vikings and the Lions are going to be contending at the top of that division. And if Green Bay wants to keep pace, they're going to have to beat one of those 2 teams, especially at home. And they get the Vikings at home this weekend. This is a big spot for them too, as they try to, get Jordan Love back healthy and just patchwork things together with Malik Willis running the ball.
I was going to say, well, hold on. Do you actually think that's going to happen? Because I think that's the biggest fool's gold in the NFL right now. I will be surprised if we see Jordan Love again before week 10. I know the Packers are doing the song and dance that they need to let people know that he's not doubtful. He's still questionable. He's going to be day to day. But I think that's just anticipation of trying to make people prepare for maybe a little less of the running quarterback game.
Yeah, I mean, teams play games with the injury report all the time, and you
Right.
don't know unless you know. You know what I mean? But here's the interesting thing to me about this. Like, everyone expected after Jordan Love got the bag that it was like, okay, we have Jordan Love, you have the Lions, and you have the Bears who just drafted their future. So we've got 3 quarterbacks who we're pretty sure about, Jared Goff of the Lions being the other one.
Yeah.
And then we have the Vikings who are doing a thing, right?
Well,
And
I
now
mean, nobody knew what to think because we were expecting this to be a full season with a rookie quarterback who a lot of people, including most Viking fans, weren't very high on.
And now it's like, nope, looks like the Vikings have their situation settled for now. And Green Bay's up in the air due to injury, and the Bears have not looked good. So it's almost been a 180 of everything we thought in this division.
Yeah, and because I think a lot of people felt like with the additions that Chicago had made with DJ Moore and drafting Ronald Dunze and establishing that running game the way they had, and their defense looked like it was going to be pretty good before the season started. Not that they've been bad up until this point, but a lot of people felt like Chicago may have the best team in the NFC North, and I don't even think it's close. That they're probably the worst team now, despite being a 3-point favorite against the Rams this weekend.
Do you think they beat the Rams?
No, I don't. I
don't
don't
either.
I like listen. I know Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are injured right now, but I don't see any way they keep pace with that offense, and more importantly, that defense. I think Caleb Williams is going to be running for his life on Sunday.
And Kyron Williams has looked really good so far too for the Rams. So, and I mean, Sean
McVay knows what he's doing. Spoiler alert.
Weird. Yeah. So while there are not like what we would call a ton of good games, there are a few games out there with some questions to answer. Like, how does Jim Harbaugh look in his first foray against the Chiefs?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
I would be surprised. We know how balanced Harbaugh likes to keep his offense run versus pass. I will be really surprised. And I know they have Justin Herbert. If you don't see a more heavy run effect from Jim Harbaugh, because the one thing that has surprised me about people attacking the Chiefs is not just a concentrated effort to keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. Now, listen, the guy could score in spades in about 20 seconds, right? We've seen him do it on a week in, week out basis, but like the Stanford approach to Oregon when it was Jim Harbaugh versus Chip Kelly has really like the lack of people going into Arrowhead to say we need to win not just the offensive possessions, but we need to win the clock management portion and just keep the ball out of 15's hands. And the guy that has done that better than anybody for 2 decades is Jim Harbaugh. Now, he's never, well, I guess he had Andrew Luck. I was going to say he hasn't really had a quarterback that looks like Justin Herbert, but that Andrew Luck guy was pretty good. But
he was all right.
Yeah, it worked. It didn't work out long term, but it worked out short term. But like, I would expect north of probably 27 carries for just the collection of running backs from the Chargers this weekend.
Take the over on J.K. Dobbins rushing yards, right?
Yeah, there you go. But the Chiefs are a 7-point favorite in that game, and the over-under is 39.5. That tells you that Vegas is in lockstep in thinking what I'm thinking, that they're just going to try and run that clock. And honestly, I think it's the best approach. I mean, the Ravens kind of tried to do that last year, but Lamar just wasn't good enough on 3rd down in that playoff situation. And I still think it was the right approach despite it not being a winning one. And it's going to be the case study on this game after, like, listen, maybe what I'm talking about will be a mute point. Patrick Mahomes will go 21 of 22 and throw for 4 touchdowns. What I'm talking about doesn't matter. But if they're able to maybe not even win the game, but get Kansas City's rhythm, their offense out of rhythm, and be successful in that standpoint, it'll be interesting to see if it gets duplicated.
How often are the Chiefs in the game with the second lowest point total of the weekend?
Yeah,
right.
Not very often.
And it would be the lowest, except that the Browns play the Raiders.
It would be the lowest, but the Browns exist.
And the Raiders too.
Yeah. Those are 2 really bad offenses. But I mean, and if we're gonna crap on the weekend, let's just go all in because the Bengals go to the Panthers, the Jaguars play the Texans too. Like, The Titans Dolphins is going to be a matchup of who could play worse. Like that point total is 36.5. I don't think they get anywhere near that either. Somehow Miami is a 1-point favorite, probably just because they have Tyreek Hill and the Titans don't. But the Titans are obviously more healthy and actually have a quarterback with a pulse.
But they have
not a very good one, but let alone a pulse.
Counting at quarterback.
Yeah. It really surprises me. We haven't heard them make a move and try to get somebody off our practice squad or something to try to fill that gap, because
doesn't seem like Tua's coming back.
Yeah, well, not even that, but how do you where you have the ability to flex that game off of Monday night? Like the NFL is thanking their lucky stars. They decided to put 2 games on Monday night with that stinker being on. Like Will Levis, 4 touchdowns, 5 picks, and then to your point, I don't even think 90% of America could tell you who's starting at quarterback for the Dolphins this week, let alone where Tim Boyle even went to college. And obviously they signed Tyler Huntley too, and it sounds like he's going to get the start. But like I don't know, man. It's going to be that is going to be a bad football game. Like I don't even care if I'm surprised and Tyler Huntley sets the world on fire, but it's not going to be good football.
Hey, I told you in our Wednesday show that is the game that I will not be watching. There is nothing redeeming about it.
You know whose eyes are going to have everybody's attention?
Who's that?
The SEC and the Big Ten. They're set to meet next week. What does this mean? It's the first time these two conferences have come together in whole in 16 years. What does this mean for the future of college athletics? In football specific, we're going to tell you about that and a whole lot more as the After Hours Lounge rolls on a Friday night here on 1620 The Zone. We're talking conference realignment, maybe? We come back here on 1620 The Zone. Hey, everybody, it's Jimmy Allen here for Pepper Jack's Grill. We've been telling you for a while now. There's 10 locations in Omaha, and it feels like there's going to be a few more sooner rather than later. Construction going on all throughout the city with Pepper Jack's logos on it. Keep an eye out for the Pepper Jacks coming to your neighborhood sooner rather than later. You can stop by and get my personal favorite. We had it for dinner last night. I got myself a steak rice bowl with onions, mushrooms, and green peppers on the top of it. You can pick your toppings the way you want. That's the beauty of Pepper Jacks. Not only are they everywhere you are, but they're always giving you what you want as well. Make sure you stop by Pepper Jacks at one of their great locations tonight and grab dinner. We'll be right back here on 1620 The Zone.
Attention Pepper Jacks fans, get ready to crunch your way into something new. Introducing Crispy Chicken, your latest protein option. Now available to add to your favorite Philly, rice bowl, nachos, burrito, or salad. It's the perfect golden crunch you didn't know your meal was missing. But hurry, it's only here for a limited time. So head to your nearest Pepper Jacks and make your meal crunch-tastic with Crispy Chicken. Available now at all locations. Get it while it's hot.
Kickoff time is here, and Chesterman Coca-Cola and Hy-Vee have your tailgating needs covered. Through the end of August, stop by your local Hy-Vee and grab 2 liters of Coca-Cola. Buy 2, get 1 free. Stay hydrated with Powerade, 20-ounce 8-packs for just $4.99. The savings don't stop there. For the month of September, you'll see Coca-Cola 6-pack mini cans, just 3 for $11, and half-liter vitamin water 6-packs, just 2 for $11. Chesterman Coca-Cola and Hy-Vee, keeping your tailgates hydrated this football season.
The After Hours Lounge here, just a half hour to go with Jimmy Allen, John Schreiner, and Ben Geezer. Stick around after this segment because we got our Super Dog picks. We're going to try to send you out with some money to end the weekend as well. We are brought to you by Pyramid Contractors. Speaking of money, if you're looking to save some when you're doing your windows, gutters, siding, or roof replacements, there's no better place than Pyramid Contractors. You can head over to pyramidroof.com tonight and book yourself a free estimate with Kyle and the gang to get all of your repairs done this fall. Speaking of this fall, big meeting happening in Nashville next week with the Big Ten commissioners and commissioner and ADs all traveling to Nashville to have conversations with the powers that be of the SEC. And this is a big meeting for a few reasons. A couple of things. The discussion of the college football playoff format is being discussed. The big NCAA versus House case. And something that I think has been coming for a long time, and I've been alluding to it, that I thought it was only a matter of time, is scheduling. And I don't think this is necessarily going to just be about how many conference games do we play. If we're talking about revenue sharing and the move to a super conference or a relegation system that has been alluded to and thrown out there and models have been mocked up, I think there's going to be a requirement to play a minimum of 1 crossover game where your schedules are going to be based on a couple of probably cupcakes and at least 1 SEC versus Big Ten matchup specifically. And I think that's really good for college football.
Yeah, it seems like we've been moving toward this for a while, right? Like these two have all the power when it comes to the CFP negotiations. They have all the power when it comes to negotiating television contracts. They are the big boys in the room. And if they decide that they want something, they're probably going to get it, right?
I mean, they've got all the money and all the power.
And the fact that they know that and they're wielding that big stick tells you that this is moving faster than you know. Like, there are wheels turning behind the scenes that we won't know about for a while. And this could be one of them that we have gotten a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, of what the future of college football is going to look like. And it's expected that, like you said, that this meeting is about scheduling and perhaps even a revamped postseason where they have, more matchups between the SEC and Big 12 or SEC and Big 10 rather in bowl games. There are more for the teams that don't make it to the playoff. They would play each other, more frequently as matchups in bowl games, which definitely, like, what happens in bowl games, right? You get a team from the Big 10 against a team from the MAC, or a team from the SEC goes and plays a Mountain West team. And those games generally don't do as big a number as if it was a mid-tier Big 10 team against a mid-tier SEC team, because those fan bases still care. Because they will still turn out to watch.
Minnesota versus Tennessee is way more intriguing than Minnesota versus Middle Tennessee State. Like it's and that's probably going to be a focal point. And Ross Dellinger broke this story today from Yahoo Sports, and he made an interesting point in it, which I tend to agree with. And he said that don't expect a whole lot of information out of this right out of the gate, because this is the first time they're meeting, and there's a lot of big personalities in that room with Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, but not to mention the other athletic directors within those two conferences as well. And this is probably going to be a formality type thing where, hey, here's what we'd like to see from the SEC. Here's what we'd like to see from the Big Ten. What do we have agreements on? What do we have disagreements on? Now the next meeting will be based around kind of a little bit of compromise and how do we make things work going forward. This feels like it's got all the makings of a preliminary hearing, to use a little Bob Williams speak, to where this is just what can and probably should and maybe will happen going forward. So this is a very historic meeting, and it's very important for the future of college athletics. I just don't know if this is the meeting we're going to circle and say, when you see the 16-team college football playoff, or when you see the crossover game be implemented, you could point at this date on the calendar and say, well, it's probably because that meeting in Nashville in 2024. I don't think that's the case. I think this is the start of those conversations. I think this is a measuring stick moment for both sides of the room to kind of get a lay of the land to see who maybe has the biggest stick. There's an S in that word. And who's going to carry the most weight, because it almost feels like ad nauseum at this point that you hear that Greg Sankey is the most powerful man in college athletics, right? It feels like that's an unwritten rule of college sports right now. I really wonder how the people in Chicago and Tony Petitti feel about that sentiment, and if they're willing to challenge it.
Well, it's because he's the longest tenured conference commissioner at one of the major ones.
Is that why, or is it because he's the commissioner of the SEC? Because it's inferred that it's because he's the commissioner of the SEC.
Yeah, but Greg Sankey wasn't always considered the most powerful man in college football.
Well, once that SEC deal got done with ESPN, it kind of felt like that was the incentive to make it. So, but listen, I mean, it's hard to argue it though, just because the SEC is king right now. And when you're talking about and the other reason I think they're lobbying to get these matchups between the SEC and the Big Ten happening more often is look at what happened last weekend and 2 weeks ago. When Michigan played Texas, 9.19 million views. When USC played LSU, 8.2 million views. So it's one of those things that if you're going to need to go back to the networks to talk about, hey, we need more money, the networks are going to say, hey, we need more viewers. And you know how we do that? We put helmet games on the field.
Well, we've been hitting this point throughout the show today that we talked about it with Nebraska, apparently, on the verge of allowing beer sales at football and volleyball. Schools are going to have to find a new way to generate some new money, right?
Sure.
They've got to have a new revenue stream. It makes a ton of sense for the SEC and Big Ten to come together and say, look, for our teams that don't make the playoff, we're not going to go and play in the Music City Bowl anymore. We're not going to go and play in the Sun Bowl. We're going to create our own thing, and we're going to have a package of games that we can sell to a network. This is a postseason Big Ten SEC crossover combined thing, and we've got all these games for you with all of these eyeballs that you will not get from the Valero Alamo Bowl. So here we go. This is the perfect way for these conferences to come together and organize a new stream of revenue based around their TV rights.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, do you go to the bowl system and say, we're reserving the rights for Big Ten versus SEC matchups in the postseason only? And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities.
And if you would like to participate in that, then that's fine.
Yeah,
and if you would not, well, have fun.
If you would like to pay us for it, that's great. But if not, we're going to find somebody else who will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's been a lot of the problem. Listen, everybody watches the bowl games, but it's for a couple reasons. Yes, a lot of people like bowl season. I think everybody who even claims they hate it have some sort of affinity for it, but it's cold outside. It's the holiday season. Most people are indoors anyway. And I really feel like for the longest time, people have just settled for the bowl system the way it is because it's there. It's always been there and people are paying money for it. But I've always, for a long time, I felt like it's one of the more underutilized portions of sports where you do have this all-encompassing audience where the majority of the country is inside and trying to consume football. So why not maximize that? That's no shot taken at the MAC or the AAC or whoever. It's a matter of you have that audience to capitalize on. Why isn't more being done with it, even though it is an exhibition and nothing really comes of it from a championship standpoint?
Can you imagine a Rose Bowl with the third place team in the Big Ten and the fourth place team in the SEC?
See, and when you were going through what you were discussing a minute ago, that was the first thing that came to mind was there has always been that relationship between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten and the Rose Bowl. Well, now it feels like everybody that the Rose Bowl wanted to have a relationship with is in the Big Ten now, and that leaves that void. And obviously, the Pac-12 is trying to come back and be a form of what it was before, but it's just not right now, and nor is it going to be anytime soon. So if you look at yourself like the Rose Bowl does as the premier destination in college football's postseason that doesn't always involve the college football playoff or necessarily the national championship, what is the marquee matchup you want? Obviously, you'd love to have the SEC and the Big Ten championship winners playing in your game, but now the fact that that's not the case, how do you pivot and still make yourself relevant and still be that showcase moment when you don't have one of the college football playoff games? And I think that's the answer.
Take the two most popular programs from the Big Ten and the SEC that didn't make the playoff and stick them in the Rose Bowl.
See, because here's the thing, and I think on paper that might look like, oh, do we really want to get Indiana versus Vanderbilt? But I think we've seen it. It happens time and time again where either Michigan or probably not Michigan or Florida have a down year, and they end up being somewhere in that realm of possibility. And to think that it's always going to be the lower tier schools of those conferences, I think is just irrational.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't have to be that. Like the Rose Bowl could still have, and the Rose Bowl may end up participating in the CFP in some fashion, but they've said that they won't move the day. So if the CFP wants to have the game on their day, then they may be involved. But if not, then they're left looking for people to play in their game, which would make a lot of sense to put, someone like a Missouri against a Penn State on years that they don't make the playoff, right? Because
Missouri versus Nebraska and Pasadena sounds like a lot of fun.
Dude, you get so many eyeballs.
We haven't talked a lot about this, but the fact that you have the new era basketball tournament happening in Las Vegas that Creighton's participating in this year, I really wonder how many of these bowls look at the NIL collective and say, hey, we'll donate X amount of dollars to the NIL collective for the team that wins this game. And I think that becomes a destination point and a selling point for teams that want to get there, something like that.
We talk about how it's become all about money. It's
because
going
it has
to become even more about the money. Like the dollar is going to run the ship. Like that's just what's going to happen. If you're not getting fair market value for your product, you're not going to do it. And that goes for teams, that goes for players, that goes for everybody.
And I think that NIL is a big portion of this, and that's what's going to get the limelight and the spotlight and everybody's going to be talking about. But I really think the House versus NCAA discussion is probably driving that maybe more even than the NIL stuff, because NIL stuff, that's fixing what's ahead of the future. You've still got to pay for the past at this point. You've got to find a way to come up with that money that you clearly weren't planning on having to spend. And I think that's what we're talking about here.
And, and the revenue sharing, like if you're going to have a certain amount of revenue.
Does that number seem low, by the way?
22 million?
Yeah.
I don't think it does, because I think they at least want to appear to maintain some of the competitive balance. Because look, New Mexico State's never going to have $22 million to pay their players. There just aren't.
UNLV apparently doesn't have $100,000 to pay a quarterback.
Right. Now, Nebraska and USC and Michigan and Ohio State and Alabama, they
have it right now. They have it right now.
They will have that. But what they don't want is that $22 million to come off the bottom line.
Right. They still got to pay people too.
They want to make an extra $22 million so that they can use that and still have their same operating budget, which it makes financial sense, right? You don't want to just all of a sudden have this huge expense that you're now responsible for and have to cut the fat somewhere else. No, let's make more money so that we have it to give to people.
Yeah, speaking of money, we're going to win you some on the other side of the break. It's a Friday, and you know what that means. It's time for our Super Dog picks. John and I are going to give you 3 underdogs that are going to outright win this weekend, both college and the NFL, when we come back. If you missed that segment, check it out at soundcloud.com/afterhours1620 and find out which 2 power conferences are meeting in Nashville next week. If you have to think about it too hard, probably already hurt your brain, so don't worry about it. But you can always listen to it. And it was brought to you by AX Plumbing, home or residential. They can do it all. Check out axpservice.com tonight for all your plumbing, water heater, gas piping, or backflow prevention issues. AX Plumbing is locally owned and operated. We'll leave your home or business cleaner than they found it. Check out axpservice.com tonight. We'll be right back with last call on our Superdog picks right here on 1620.
Hey, everybody. John Schreiner here for Cunningham's. You like wings? Of course you do. You like good wings? Yeah, that's even better. And if you want good wings, you need to get yourself to one of the two great locations for Cunningham's. You'll find them in Old Mill or in Blackstone. Same great menus at both locations. The same great smoked wings at both. This week on Wing Wednesday, Derek and the crew brought us the 4-alarm wings, their spiciest offering. And let me tell you what, the 4-alarm wings dipped in some ranch were perfect. They've got that nice, strong kick, but it's not just fire. It's got a great flavor. If you like your wings spicy, I urge you to get out to Cunningham's and try the 4-alarm wings. They are delicious. If spice isn't your thing, maybe you get some blueberry sriracha. Maybe you get the regular buffalo. All their flavors are great. You are not going to go wrong. Get out to Cunningham's. Get yourself some great drinks for the Tab Takeovers. Check them out on the weekends. They got Sunday Ticket, and you'll have all the great college football action on the TVs on Saturdays as well. Great food, great sports, great atmosphere. What could be better? Get to Cunningham's tonight.
Well, hopefully right now you're listening to the sounds of Semisonic and Closing Time, if Ben Geezer remembered to do so. If you did so, Ben, attaboy, good job. This is a pre-recorded edition of the After Hours Lounge, so we can't give Ben all the credit or criticism he may deserve at this moment. We do appreciate it, but you continue to listen to us here on a Friday night. We are brought to you by Pyramid Contractors. Over a decade of being the number one roofer in Omaha, check out pyramidroof.com, where you never have to settle for less and can grab yourself a free estimate on windows, gutters, siding, doors. They do it all. Check out pyramidroof.com tonight. It's a Friday night, and you know what that means. We're going to give you not just one, not just two. We're going to give you 3 teams that are underdogs this weekend in football to not only cover the spread, but outright win. I'm going to start it off. If you're just now listening to the show, you probably missed this one earlier. I already gave it to you. The Vikings are a 3-point underdog at Lambeau Field this weekend. I'm a believer in the Vikings. It took me a while, but I got there. I think more importantly, that defense is for real. I think they will be ready for Malik Willis and that offense. Not only do I think the Vikings win, I think they win convincingly and continue that great story for Sam Darnold and that team. In college football, this one is happening tonight. You could still get this one in the next couple of minutes here if you head over to our friends over at Warhorse Casino and Sportsbook. Washington is a 1.5 underdog tonight at Rutgers. I don't understand why. This Washington defense has been spectacular. I think they dominate and set the tone for that game tonight. I think they absolutely manhandle Rutgers and control that game start to finish. They held Northwestern to just 5 points last week. I think the Huskies absolutely roll. And then BYU has kind of been our de facto favorite team on the show this season, is also an underdog this weekend. They head to Baylor as a 3-point dog. The Cougars are for real, folks, and I think they are the biggest threat to Utah in the Big 12, in my opinion. I think they should be favored in every game for the rest of their schedule until that November 9th matchup with the Utes, and to me, that makes them the winners of this game on Saturday, where I think they absolutely handle Baylor without issue.
You know what? I agree with you on BYU. I made them my best bet in our college football bets segment, Jimmy, but the line was 3.5 then. It's down to 3, so there's some money coming in on the side of BYU, and that's why I'm also taking them in Superdogs to win outright this week. +3 on the road at Baylor, who's coming off a super disappointing loss to Colorado. I think there's a hangover here for the Baylor Bears. I think BYU wins this game by at least a touchdown. And so give me that one. I got another college football game of the weekend. South Florida is a 4.5-point dog at Tulane. I don't think Tulane's lived up to the expectations of what they were supposed to be this season. Some people had them as that group of 5 representative in the CFP. They have not lived up to that. Look, South Florida, they made Alabama sweat until that fourth quarter explosion by the Crimson Tide. South Florida's not bad. I'll take 4.5 points and give you South Florida to win outright at Tulane. And I got one in the NFL. The Bucs are a home dog to the Eagles. 2-point dog. I think the Eagles might be a house of cards. Something doesn't look right with Philadelphia. It doesn't look like it's supposed to. They play sloggy football, and I think Baker Mayfield's got it rolling with Chris Godwin and that offense down there. I like Baker's resurgence. I think this is a good team. I'll take the Bucs to beat the Eagles at home.
Yeah, and when we were talking about the NFL earlier, like that was one of the matchups that I struggled not to talk about too. But I'm kind of on the other side of the fence there. I don't know if they necessarily beat Tampa this weekend, but I'm not necessarily in the same realm that I was a couple weeks ago about the Eagles. I think we may look back at that that drop pass by Saquon Barkley as maybe that aha moment for the Eagles where they kind of figured things out. It's going to be interesting to see how that is handled going forward and if they're able to bounce back from that. But I kind of think the Eagles might be a little bit better off than they were maybe 2 weeks ago, and that may be the rallying point for that entire team. Before we get out of here, I got to ask you, have you seen the new logo for the Atlanta Falcons?
Oh, I have not.
It's
they have
awful.
A new logo?
They just unveiled it on social media about it's 2 o'clock now, so about 1 o'clock today. And it is the red uniform, like the red helmets they have with the black Falcons logo. Yeah. That is now their official logo, and they changed up the Falcon to look skinnier. And it's not a very good look.
Oh.
It's literally an all red background with the black Falcon, and it's like its talons are more pointed. I was a bigger fan of the black backdrop. I don't know. The Jamal, what's my man's name? The Dirty Bird dancer, Jamal Anderson. Thank you. In that version of the Falcons uniform with the white on blacks and the blacks on red, like those were my more favorite versions of the Atlanta uniform. And this is like, I don't know. It seems like whenever they wear that red helmet, it just sticks out.
And here's what you need to know.
In Major League Baseball tonight, the Mets are getting shut out 5-0 at Milwaukee, top of the third. Meanwhile, the Braves are winning at home 2-0 over the Royals, top of the eighth.